This afternoon we have the second Women in Bus and Coach Awards, and don't forget also at the end of the day, please don't run off, there's another drinks reception and chance, a final networking opportunity. Before the awards we have a number of truly inspiring speakers, each unique, each different, and we're going to start our afternoon in community transport with a perspective on why women are key to its success. Please would you welcome two ladies with between them a wealth of knowledge and experience. Kim Ward, CEO of Lothian Community Transport Services, last year's winner of our Woman in Community Transport Award, and also welcome Victoria Armstrong, who is the CEO of the Community Transport Association and a Director of Women in Bus and Coach. Thanks.
Good afternoon, everybody. I've opted for the handheld mic so I can walk around a little bit, so hopefully that's all right. Yes, what is community transport? Well, I do have some notes on my phone, but I did figure that if I don't know what community transport is at this point in my career, I've got a trustee here today. I'll probably get in the sack next week, so I'm not going to try and I'm not going to look at my notes. So what is community transport? You have heard from some community transport operators this morning on our panels, and some of you may be very well versed in what community transport is, and some of you might think, I think I know what that is, not 100% sure. So that's why this quite short session after lunch is just to give you a little bit of a briefing on what community transport is and how you can all get involved as well. So both Kim and myself, between us, I think we've got 6 years experience in transport. We are both from a voluntary sector background. So I've been involved in transport now for 3 years. So I don't have a lot of personal friends and family that are involved in transport. So when I was thinking about how do I introduce this, what should I say, I thought a little bit about what community transport is not. And I thought back to when I was appointed to the role of Chief Executive at the CTA and what certain friends and family thought that I would be doing. So there was one, the first one was, that's so good. Those mobile libraries are so important. Well, yeah, they absolutely are. Not quite community transport, but that was what one person thought it was. In the northeast of England, where I'm from, there is one of our members called Community Transport, and they do work with people, but they're predominantly known in the northeast for delivering furniture and doing office clearances. So one of them said to me, because she runs a charity, she said, when you get there, you better sort that furniture out because it's terrible, it was late. So it's not that. And then I had to rush back and think, is that what I'm doing? Like, is that what community transport is? Because I wasn't particularly experienced. I'd done all my research for the job, but I was thinking, have I missed something? And then finally, it was my mother that thought that I would therefore be driving a minibus. And anybody who knows me, I do have an issue with spatial awareness, not because of any gender stereotype, but I do have difficulty with one of my eyes and my peripheral vision. So my mum said, you're not driving, are you? And I said, no, Mother, I'm definitely not driving, so she could relax after that. But I think there is, if those of you that do know a little bit about community transport, sometimes people do think that that's volunteers and it's about minibuses. So Kim's going to say a little bit about the diversity of that in a minute. But what I would say about community transport, it's not all of those things, or not all of those things that I mentioned. It is about people. It's about meeting social needs. So CTA, we're a membership organisation. We don't operate any fleets or any of that. It's our members. We've got 1,400 members across the UK. And it's them day in, day out, you've heard from some today, that deliver support to passengers to get them to where they need to be. So that's what we do. And when we look at whether someone could be a member of the CTA, quite simply, it's are you a voluntary group, a community group, or a charity, or a kick? And what that really means is you can't make a profit, but you can make a surplus. And if you're making that surplus, it goes back into the aims and objectives of your charity or your charitable aim. So that's the main criteria for us. And now I'm going to hand over to Kim, who's got lots of examples of not just minibuses, but the diversity in community transport.
Yep, thank you, Victoria. So similar to Victoria, about not long after I'd started, I was driving my daughter and her friend to school or somewhere like that, and my daughter's friend said, what does your mum do for a job? And she went, oh, I don't know, I think she drives buses, and that was it. So all of their friends think I'm a bus driver, and there's nothing wrong with that, but it's just not my job. What's happening in community transport right now? Well, in short, all of the things that you may associate with community transport. So we're doing the driving of disabled people, the driving of vulnerable people, home to school runs, community buses, and all of that work is obviously very worthwhile. But when I took on this job, people would say to me, so what is it that community transport does? Just move disabled people around. And the word just suggests that that is a very one-dimensional industry, and that the sector is just there for disabled people. And whilst we are there for disabled people, and I'm pretty proud to be associated with the traditional work that community transport carries out, there is heaps of other things happening within the sector. Just like everybody here, you might be doing good work, but the work is never done. And so what I am going to speak to you about is 3 different examples of women-led projects, and that relates back to why women are useful in community transport and why we are seeing success in community transport. So the first one that came to mind when I was thinking about the diversity of the work we do, you may have heard of people being taken to and from hospital appointments, etc., and booking that transport. There's actually a lot more that's going on in community transport. So in my own organisation, I work in Scotland. 70% of people in Scotland live in the Central Belt, and for those who don't know that description, it's the area between Glasgow and Edinburgh. And that means that healthcare tends to be predominantly within those areas. And we came across a hospital in Dumfries, which is an area on the west coast of Scotland, where there is no radiotherapy unit in Dumfries. In fact, there's no radiotherapy unit for over 100 miles. So people have had some cancer treatment, and then they have radiotherapy. They are having to travel over 100 miles to Edinburgh. They stay in a hotel by themselves Monday to Friday. They get 15 minutes of radiotherapy a day, and then somebody drives them back. And the hospital were reliant on either taxis doing that, which is obviously incredibly expensive, or they were reliant on volunteers. And that's a lot of pressure for a volunteer to regularly carry out that run. They do still use volunteers, but we have entered into a contract with them where we deliver that transport. So we take them on a Monday and we bring them back on a Friday. One of the real benefits for the passengers is that they get to know that driver, and the driver knows the passengers, and they say that it's really beneficial for them. So I know that there's a passenger who has problems with his knees, so he needs quite a bit of space, and it's just that opportunity to give them that extra bit of service, and that's something that community transport is able to do. I didn't know that that was the case, that people were travelling sometimes for 8 weeks at a time, Monday to Friday, and doing that. And so I'm fairly sure that quite a few of you, probably as shocked as I was to hear that that's how people are receiving cancer treatment, but it does really help them to have that regular service. And the next example is car clubs. So car clubs were started before my time in community transport, and then insurance became prohibitive and the costs around it for people to run those car clubs. Community transport did a lot of work with brokers to set up affordable insurance, and what happened from that is that very small organisations, I'm talking less than £100,000 a year turnover, sometimes less than £50,000, were able to set up car clubs. And the reasons that people are using those car clubs are not to go and, I mean, they may be using it to go and visit Auntie Betty in the next village, but people more and more are using those car clubs to connect to transport. So people, particularly in Scotland again, in rural areas, there may be a one-car household because they both have worked from home or they've moved out to the country, but every so often one of them needs to go into the office and they can't use that car. They're using the car club to then connect to the local train or the local bus and follow on the journey from there. And so car clubs have a place in the future of transport planning and transport strategy. And it can be frustrating as a community transport operator that sometimes we're the afterthought and we're not there in the conversation at the time when we can make a big difference and support the industry in a wider level. And the final work that I want to speak to you about today is it's a funded project that my organisation is working on. I'm really proud of this project, but my colleague Fiona Harris, who is here today, did all of the legwork for it, so she would have to take the credit for it. Title's self-explanatory. It's the Women's Night Bus. So when I started the job, I kept note. One of the areas we cover in Lothian Community Transport Services is Mid Lothian. Mid Lothian is an area close to Edinburgh, but slightly outside of Edinburgh. I kept seeing that women were being attacked in the evening, and I then had a look, and there is a strategy for violence against women and girls set up by Mid Lothian Council, and it's like, what could we do to support this? So we've set up the Women's Night Bus, and that bus is a flat rate of £3, and we collect from various pubs, bars and restaurants in Dalkeith, a particular town, and we drop women at their doors or whatever address they want to go to on a Friday and Saturday evening. This project has had huge support, but we found that we were having, like, Border News were coming, national radio were coming to speak to us, national newspapers, and that is because it doesn't exist anywhere else in the country. We've looked because we wanted to get information and advice off the people who were already doing it. It doesn't exist. We hope we can expand it, but I think that that is an example of how innovative community transport is, and that we're not just moving disabled people around.
I think finally, just to add, we always wanted this to be the start of a conversation. I'm really proud to be a director of Women in Bus and Coach as well, who've really embraced community transport. As Kim mentioned, sometimes we do feel a little bit like we're not integrated into the system as much as we should be. So my first, we're talking about call to action today. My first one is, you've all got varying professions across various different responsibilities and roles. So I would just encourage you in your professional role, wherever you are or what you're doing, just to think, where might community transport fit? Or just think about it, because it might not be on your radar. You might not be connected with your local community transport, but it might actually be really, really helpful, as Kim said, with the car clubs, getting people moving to those transport hubs. So please, in any of your professions, think about community transport. My door is always open. I always like to receive a speculative email for a chat and a virtual coffee. So I'm very, very happy to talk to anyone. And just finally, we all have lives, and there's so much spirit and so much wanting to do more in the room. And I know we've only got 24 hours in the day, but you will all have vital transport experience that I bet if you looked around to your local CT, it's run by boards, it's run by volunteers. If you were so minded, there are those opportunities out there. And again, if you wanted to talk about that, I'd be really pleased to. So thank you very much.